Hey, you're welcome to our talk. You're welcome again today. You're welcome. I welcome all of you that are here now online. I welcome you for taking your time. I appreciate the time that you're taking off to have a very difficult conversation with me. And I'm very happy that you are here. So if you're here and you're watching, whatever you're watching, indicate, let us know where you're watching from and so that we can properly salute you and appreciate you. This is our space. This is your space. This is a space and a platform whereby we come together every Thursday and we have a heart-to-heart conversation on the topic racism and its effect, of course, in our lives. And we do not only talk, we also have time to heal from the hurt of racism. And we are not only healing, we want to empower ourselves so that after we are healed, we can be able of course, to take actions. We can be able to renew our minds because that's all about the conversation for the renewal of our minds. We want to renew our minds. We want to take positive actions. We want to find ways to move forward. That's why I welcome you today. You're all welcome. You're welcome. I welcome you all watching all over the world. You're welcome. You're welcome. Invite your friends, share the links, and invite your friend so that we can go into this conversation. It is so amazing that it is the death of George Floyd on the 20th or 25th, I beg your pardon, on the 25th of May 2020 that provoked a global conversation on a very, very important topic like racism. But we know that racism is not a thing of now. We know by history that racism dates 401 years today. So the question for me, and a very important question, is always to find out why the death of George Floyd. Must someone die before we get to talk about racism and its effect on our lives? No, but I want to sympathize with all of the oppressed. I want you to understand that you are not alone. You are never alone, and you are not alone. And to the oppressors, I want them to understand that it can't continue in this way. And that's why we are having this conversation today, ladies and gentlemen, a very intensive conversation and a conversation that may transform our minds, give us the power, the strength that we need to move forward. So I welcome you, Charity. You're welcome. Forward the links to friends so that they can take part as well. I welcome all those that are watching wherever you are. Just indicate that you're online. And ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the conversation. Get your knee off our necks. And today with me, we have a very special guest. We have been having very dynamic experts in our midst. We have had before now a very dynamic young man by name Rahim Diallo, a policymaker, who gave us the strategies of the and the depth of racism, and he explained that racism is an ideology, the ideology to promote the white supremacy. And then, of course, we had a very dynamic woman, a therapist also, and she's a trauma consultant by profession by name Abeke. I want to be very careful so I don't pronounce her names very wrongly. Bate Mona Abeke, and she told us the effect that racism could have on our personal development, on our personal growth, right? And so today we are having another dynamic woman, our powerful lady, a mother, another name mother, a lioness. We have Maria Kaine today. who is also going to be talking to us about the effect of racism on families. So I welcome Maria Kaine. Maria, you're welcome to our talk today. How are you?
I'm fine, Vera. Thank you for having me on here. I did have a few technical problems, but yeah, we're good
I'm
to go.
so I'm so glad that you're here, and it was a privilege to talk with you and to have to share some very deep conversations. We had the privilege, or I had the privilege to converse with you this afternoon and got some amazing things. And that's why I'm so happy that you're here and that you're going to give us some great insights. You're
Yeah,
welcome
Vera.
again.
Thank you for having me on again, and thank you to all the viewers that are on here. I hope we can do justice to this topic.
Tell me a little more about yourself. I know that you're a barrister from profession. Let's hear a little more about yourself.
Yeah, Vera, I am a barrister. I practiced in Nigeria before coming to Germany. I've got a family here, husband and 11 children. And yes, been quite engaged with some NGOs, cultural, basically. I work in the church, so yes, but primarily why I'm here as in my role as a mother and in the family with the
Exactly.
nature role.
Exactly. I just can't wait to hear your talk. And when we were having our discussion, I said you're going to have some 15 minutes to really have to expatiate the motive behind racism, the effect of racism in the families. And of course, we had to have a conversation on the way forward. So, Maria, this is your platform. Let us know what is that. So give us your presentation, and I'm all ears, and I guess that the listeners too are waiting.
Yeah, good, Vera. Basically, we all know what is the definition of racism, discrimination, everything. But, with all these problems going on, one has to really go back and look and find out what is the motive behind racism. I mean, as a lawyer, too, we always look at motive. What was the motive for the crime? And you will discover racism is something that was introduced somewhere along the line. When first the Spanish and Portuguese went to America, you'd be surprised that as early as 1513, a black man was among them, Juan Garrido. He went to America. He owned slaves. He owned land. You see? So there wasn't anything like race. You got there, if you had the means, then you owned your land, you had your slaves. And then somewhere, the plantations were growing, and people started bringing in slaves. But then it was basically like indentured servants. You work for like 15 years, then you get your freedom. So somewhere around 1619 or so, we had slaves coming in now. There was even a slave from Angola called Anthony Johnson. So he got his freedom, he owned land, and he owned his own slaves. But then somewhere, it's all capitalistic. You have more plantation, you need more workers. And the more workers you need, the harsher the conditions. Now, they couldn't make use of the Native Americans because these people, they knew the land with their eyes blindfolded. If you take them in captivity, they can escape and go to other tribes. You couldn't maltreat the white man because you would have a problem. So now you have the Africans, and basically the Africans are stronger, they can work harder. And no one was going back to Africa to really tell them, what is going on, how badly are the slaves being treated. So they kept bringing slaves from Africa, And then the problem now is you have few wealthy, rich people, you have a lot of poor white people, and you have the blacks poor. And now, they're all in harmony, kind of. So the rich people now got nervous. What if these people outpower us? So they now decided to make this demarcation. Okay, you know what? We now just focus on the blacks. and they started making laws like the 1705 slave code. When now it became that Africans, also basically, when you're not Christian, you come there, you are no longer a human being, you now become a property of your master. Previous to these laws, you could, after some years, gain your freedom, get your property. But after these slave codes, you became property. Your master had a right to kill you without any consequences. Even your children became slaves. And then came in this scientific racism, where you had to prove that the black man is not human. So basically, racism is about inferiority. You are inferior. You are not a human being. You don't have any rights. And then, you see, you have people like Cartway, who said, even for a slave to run away was a sickness called drapetomania. And you had to, oppress the slave and, put him in a state of total submission so that he would just be submissive to your laws and rules. And that's how basically racism came about. And it is with this same attitude, Vera, that, they went into Africa to colonialize us. And yes, this racism, it moved further even to Europe. Because remember, the stage when they demarcated, these are the white people, not everybody that is today considered a white person was then a white person. Like the Jews weren't considered as white people at that time. And this Madison Grant, he was a lawyer in America then, he wrote a book, The Passing of the Great Race, claiming that the Nordic race, which Germans were then, is the superior race. And, it goes down to the bottom where you have the black man. So now, this book was translated into various languages, including German. And Hitler had his own copy, which he called his Bible. And it was based on his Bible that he started his program of, eliminating the Jews. Basically the same thing, racism, just that probably in Germany, Hitler had no use of the Jews, so he decided to get rid of them. But in America, they had use of the blacks as tools, So they were just there to preserve you as long as possible so you can do your work. When you can't do your work, then you are no longer of benefit. Yeah, so we really have to understand what racism is about. Words like discrimination they are seemingly mild, I would say, because racism actually means you are not a human. You are not even probably as valuable as an animal. Hi, Vera.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was history. My goodness. Yeah. You took us to an amazing history class from 1513, when we also have blacks having their own slaves. And this reminds me of the conversation of our great man, Nelson Mandela, who said he's fighting against the oppressors of the white man as well as the oppressor of the black man. So when we look at this, can we say that racism is not a thing of white or black? What do you think?
Oh, certainly, Vera. It is a thing of white, because it was made to oppress the black man. But, everywhere there would be a Judas Iscariot. So some black people profited from racism. If I owned a plantation and I needed slaves on my plantation, I'd probably think that, okay, good, I'm thriving in the system. So yeah, I'm sorry for my black brothers, but I need my plantation. And funnily enough, even this slave, Anthony Johnson, that gained his freedom and owned so much property, after the slave code came in 1705, his whole property was taken away from the family. which basically means that even if as a black man at a stage you might feel you are profiting in this oppressive system, you have no guarantee you would profit in the future, that your children would profit. So it's basically the white oppression on the black.
This is an amazing conversation. But what about Malcolm X said something. He said there were two kinds of slaves. There was the slaves that worked in the field and the domestic slave. What makes them different?
Yeah, the slave in the field was doing the hard, raw work. Now, this domestic slave had some privileges, they were in the house, they were serving the master. So, they got the leftovers from the master's table. And of course, they didn't have to work maybe so hard like those in the field. And, I can imagine that they were also to some extent selling out on their brothers in captivity, But then, just like today, I would say they were the privileged black people in the oppressive system. So we could.
Now let's bring that now to our conversation today. Today we are having a very challenging conversation, the effect of racism on families. Now, exactly. Tell us a little more about that.
Yes, Vera, when you brought up this topic, I did tell you, something seemed so easy, but when you go into it, it's not actually that easy. And there hasn't actually been much research done on this topic, So basically, we have to be innovative. We have to look at our own experiences, and we'll have to go on. So,
and maybe we can also be the one to start the experiment, who knows? Or the research,
Exactly. We have to rewrite history, so to say. Okay, but basically, for purposes of simplicity, let's look at it this way. Even in Africa, the family is the first unit, It's there the children get the first training, the tools they need to move on in life. You understand? So the family unit is very, very important. Now, let's look at the black families here in Germany. We want to be specific on Germany. I would like to take the man first. Of course, some things I say about the man do refer to the woman, you understand. Like if we talk of work, so it also refers to the woman. But basically, for purpose of simplicity, let's, break it up, the man. What do you have? You have a black man coming here. He's coming out of his familiar background, his network. You come here, to Germany specific, the language. Now, you don't get, you face discrimination. You don't get a good job. I mean, even if you come with qualification, most people find it difficult to get a job with their qualifications from Africa. So now this is the problem. You don't get a befitting job, means you are poor. That's the second jeopardy. You are poor, you don't have a befitting job, you are in a society that is constantly hostile, constantly discriminating against you. Okay? You now you want to marry. What happens most times? You see, a union can only function if a man and woman really understand themselves. But now it's even difficult for most men to choose their partners adequately. Because you either have what is here. If you want to court a woman back home, you know how difficult it is getting visa and all. So basically, often people go into marriage without even fully knowing their partners. Or you're kind of induced into a choice because you have a narrow selection. Then you start a family. Then the problem starts. You're not working to earn enough, so automatically you are not a provider. And basically, a man should be a provider for his family. You're not a provider, because the woman will look at you and say, hell, I get my own girl, I get my what? You can go. I mean, I don't need to make any special sacrifice. So the man is not the provider. The man also, he can't even raise his children the way he wants to. Because you come from a background, oh, this is how I discipline my kids. This, no, there's the government. Oh, you can't do this. I've had a case of a school writing me to explain immediately why my child prays every evening. So you see, the parents get intimidated. They are scared. You can't raise your child adequately. You can't provide for your child and wife adequately. You face racism constantly on the road everywhere. You are stressed. What do we have? A stressed man, a nervous man. Then you look at the woman that comes here. She's a woman, I think we women, we even have the double grunt. You are facing all those problems other women have, the challenges of a job and the family, the challenges of equal pay, the challenges of being discriminated as a woman. Now, on top of that, you are constantly faced with this racism and discrimination. Right from when you are pregnant, you face racism and discrimination, but some of us don't even know. You might go to the doctor and complain, oh, my back is aching, my head is aching. Well, if you were a white woman, the doctor would probably say, oh, you know what, you need a house helper, she'll come and help you. But as a black person, he'll just say, okay, yeah. Then it goes all the way. You have your kids. You understand? So you see, the woman is equally stressed. She is confronted with a man she doesn't understand because the man is angry, he's frustrated. You understand? It affects their relationship. Now the children are growing. What happens? Constant discrimination, constant racism in the school. It starts from the kindergarten, If you are lucky enough that your child is somewhat smart, then okay, they will now move to the behavior. You understand? And of course, you know that there's discrimination every day in the kindergarten. But children, even older ones, they can only tell you concretely, oh, my teacher said this, but they cannot express the hostility, the animosity, or the rejection they face there. Then the child comes into school, the teacher is constantly calling the parents, complaining about the child. What happens? The parents get scared because, of course, many of us have this belief that, okay, even if we can't make it here, our children have the chance to make it here. Now you see all your dreams and hope dwindling away. What do? You start aggressive parenting. You become desperate. You start getting aggressive on the child. Now, you have a child that doesn't have a safe haven, and every child needs a safe haven. The child is on the street, discrimination, problems, school, discrimination, problems. The child goes home, the parents are putting pressure. The child doesn't have a safe haven again. The child gets aggressive, the child gets frustrated, the child gets withdrawn. You don't see the whole potential of this child coming out, A child that might actually be very intelligent cannot give this back, and you constantly get told, oh, you can't, you start to believe it, Then there's the problem. Now, as the parents are being aggressive to the child is resenting the parents because the child will think, but you put me into this mess. You brought me here. You are black. You are poor. So why giving me the stress? And then you see them as they get older, they go and look for a family, a safe haven, which is friends outside. And of course, birds of the same feather flock together. So, of course, they're also going to look for children that have challenges just like them. Even if those children have some criminal traits or whatever, I would say adolescents. Let's not talk of children and criminal. Yes. But now you see they lose focus on their future and the friends becomes so important, peer group influence, and they dwindle off and, one day, these children will form their own families and will have this cycle all over and over again. So those are basically the problems,
Wow. And they are big, enormous.
Yes.
To traumatize. because if we go back to the last week's conversation, it was about trauma
Yeah.
and hindering also personal growth. Now we know that the problems are there. So are there any possible solutions? Are there steps where you can say, this is what we could do? Because I know that if there were solutions, I mean, 400 years now, we would have found the solution already right now. But what
Yeah.
can we do to be able to help these families? Maybe step by step tools to give to the families.
Yes, Vera, this is a good question. If we had the answer, maybe we wouldn't all have these problems, you see. But yes, we can try looking at it. I think the first very important thing we have to do, we all have to give our children a safe haven at home. We have to listen to them. We have to understand. When the teacher says, your child is making noise, yes, 50 children may have been making noise, but yours keeps being pointed out. When your child is having bad notes, you have to reflect on the school system here. You know, there are some subjects, 50% is written, the other 50%, the teacher virtually assesses you. In core subjects, it's about 25% assessment from the teacher. You understand? That makes a difference. But we have to give our children a safe haven at home. That's the first core step. And studies have been carried out here that parents that talk to their children about racism, you understand? Parents that talk to their children, it is possible that the children might be angry and aggressive, but they don't have so much problem with anxiety as children whose parents tend to deny that racism exists. And funny enough, you would find out that it's more often tends to be these parents that think they've made a step forward or upwards that tend to believe that, okay, you know, things are going so well for me, so I don't really believe there's racism or so much discrimination here in Germany. And now, such children that can't talk to their parents about their feelings also tend to bottle it up, and then you have this anxiety and fears, you know. So the first step is a safe haven for our kids at home. The second step, of course, we need, you know, racism is all about inferior, inferior, inferior. We're in a capitalist society. The only way you can prove to someone you're not inferior is to be on the same level with that person. So we do need Black businesses. You know, we do need, we need to see not just Black police, Black doctors, Black lawyers. We need to see Black people represented everywhere. We need Black businesses. We need Black psychologists, psychiatrists. I mean, if you as a woman go to a German psychologist or what, I can bet you that marriage might be ending up very soon because they don't understand our culture. You understand? We do need to be represented. We need our kindergartens, which of course our Black children, so that we can have a choice. You know, I should be able to say, oh, you know what, I'm actually intend to move back to Africa in 10 years. So I'd rather like my child to go on an African school. For instance, we need to have that choice that we can go to a Black school or go to a white school and still be treated equally. You see, we need to come up economically. We need to come up intellectually. And also, very important, we need to rewrite history. Most of it is already being written. We need to teach it to ourselves. As a child, you know, I thought the English were so brilliant. You know, they stopped slave trade. They went on the high seas and stopped what they were themselves, the slave traders. But this is what we were taught. I remember my first vernacular book in Nigeria in primary school, you know, in Igbo. If you open the first page, there was a white man on it. And there was written, Le Beke Beke Marama. Look at the white man, he's fine. Now, why would that be in a vernacular book? And the same thing here, you know, the books the children are being, you know, we've been fighting and say, oh, remove this word from the book. yeah, that's not enough. Remove nigger, remove this. Books that are used in school should also reflect positively on Africans. See, that's another way we have to go. And these, Vera, honestly, they are really long-term projects. But for right now, your kids and my kids, that's not going to work. You know why? Because we need so many years to get to that spot. You know, we have very few Africans that are really professionally engaged, you understand? And now again, we have this inferior culture that we have inherited from our parents that has been, you know, drummed into us so much. You know that you could open a black school tomorrow and the African parents might not want to go there. I mean, many of you that are
no, I know that already. Remember, we have been having this conversation. Remember, we have been having this conversation some time past where we had the holiday programs, and we had each holiday time, we had the holiday programs. We had 22 kids come. From 22 kids, we had always 4 kids, and the 4 kids, 2 were my kids, you know, and the other 2 were. It's an amazing conversation to know that even if we do, but the question is, we are here now. So how come we are still not being able to renew our minds so that we can make the best out of what we are learning?
You know, we can't blame ourselves. As I said, this racism, you know, that has gone on it went on for years. Do you know how many philosophers, scientists went about proving, oh, the black man is inferior, you know, you don't have the same brain matter, your testosterone level is too high, you have this. Even people like Thomas Jefferson, you know, so many very, very powerful people have over too many years done this. You understand? So it's not something we can just change overnight. This was something, you see, like Marcus Garvey. He had this, you know, pomp and show uniting all Africans. What happened? They destroyed him. You now look at someone like Martin Luther. You know, people, when Martin Luther was talking about his dream, that was okay. You can talk about your dream. But when he went to the core of the problem, you know, attacking, going to Vietnam, attacking the fact that black people are poor, living in poor neighborhoods, being criminalized, they put an end to him. Look at what happened in Africa with Gaddafi. You see, this is it.
So each time we have to take the real conversation and go right deep into the foundation, then we should be ready for resistance.
Yes, you should be ready, because it is a whole international system. These things have been studied over years and years and are being implemented. As soon as you get too close to home, they take you out. So you see what will happen. Look at this thing, that what happened in Stuttgart now. Can you believe that children just got up and went on a rampage? So now what do you think will happen? You will have some local newspapers, you know, they will invite a few black people, you know, say what you have to say. We are listening to you. But when you come out to really attack these theories and really make concrete change, then you are becoming dangerous to them. So it's not going to be that easy, you understand. We need most of all to change. We need to have an ideology, you know, in those days when people came all black and proud and all that, we need to really, you know, emancipate. Our minds are still in slavery. Look at this now. The average woman, what is our idea of beauty? Straight hair, fair complexion. Oh, when the white women suddenly discovered that booty is in, we suddenly realize that our booty is in. You understand?
You know?
So,
you know,
it's right. It's so deeply entrenched that we first have to work on the minds, our
But
minds.
how do we work on our minds? Because this is not the first conversation we are having, and it will not be the last conversation we are having. We know that the problem goes right deep into the mind, and we know that it is a thing that has been there for almost 400 and how many years. We know this. What is the thing that is hindering us to be able to renew our minds and work together so that we can overcome this?
See, Vera, it's a vicious circle. Now, if the white man is owning a big hotel and I am
Mm-hmm.
cleaning the hotel, or his doorman carrying the luggages up, you can come here today and tell me, oh, do you know you are just as good as the white man? But that's not the reality. Because I'm
It's true.
carrying his bags up, I'm cleaning his room. I go
You
home,
have a point.
I'm living on the edge of the society. I can't afford those things. You understand? So when you tell me something and you want me to believe it,
Mm-hmm.
I have to see the reality of it. So you see how one edge eats onto the
Yeah.
other. Do you understand? So
Mm-hmm.
now what do we have to do? If we look
Mm-hmm.
now, what do we have on the ground? We have a lot of African families. Certainly, there are some exceptions. A lot of African families are in this dilemma we have spoken about.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a few Africans up there that own, like you have this, your social services. We have some black doctors. We have a few there,
Mm-hmm.
but they can't reach out to everybody. If you
Mm-mm.
decide to go and talk to one family every week, you will need a year to talk to about 50 families.
That's
But we
true.
have something very important here we can make use of. We have a lot of cultural NGOs and we have a lot of black churches.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to work with what we have on the ground now. And
Mm-hmm.
quite honestly, I must say it, our churches and our cultural organizations, they have failed us in this way. Because what you don't just preach to someone,
Mm-hmm.
about the life after. You have to preach to them about this life here. How to live as a family. A strong family is what produces strong children.
Mm-hmm.
How do you succeed here? How can you get help? Invite these professionals to your churches or to your organizations to reach out to these people. And that
Mm-hmm.
way, you understand, gradually, more and more people will be able to attain this higher level. But that doesn't
Okay.
happen now.
So, what hinders the working together with the professionals and these churches and the cultural organizations? What could be? Is it also still a racism then amongst the blacks, or is that still the consequences of racism in the mind?
Yes, Vera, you see now we are now back to your domestic slave and your field slave, aren't we? Because,
We are back there.
of course, these organizations and church pastors and whatever, they are on a higher level now. You know what I mean? They are doing relatively well compared to their congregation or their members. So you see, you have this thing, this intellectual arrogance. You feel, okay, I can do it all, so I don't need to bring in an expert from out there. I'm a pastor. I can give my congregation everything they need for salvation. So that's where the
Intellectual
problem is.
arrogance. I mean,
Yeah.
that word is so interesting. Intellectual arrogance. What's that intellectual arrogance?
Yeah, as opposed to intellectual humility. When you feel, I have the training, I've got the qualification, so I know it. And, I'm not going to listen to that person that didn't have this degree like I had, or didn't have this, you understand? So you're swimming up there. You are swimming up there, and you've lost total touch with the grassroots. You've lost touch with your congregation and the problems, mental and environmental, everything they are faced with on a daily basis, you know. And that's it's really sad. It's really sad. Yeah.
It's really a visual cycle. You said something like it's a visual cycle, and if we have to continue this cycle, then I agree with you. It will take us long time to be able to overcome the oppressors. Because if we remember the tactics of the oppressor, it was a divide and rule. So he divides us to better rule us. So if we still continue like this, then even the domestic slaves
Oh
amongst
yeah.
us will now start using the tactics of the oppressors to also oppress us again.
Yeah, which does happen, Forgetting, you know, you see, Maslow's, if you look at this Maslow's pyramid, you will see that, you know, actually, you say, you know, when a human being fulfills his basic needs of feeding and eating and all that, he looks for security. Then right up to the pyramid where you get, you know, this self-actualization, you understand? But Maslow even himself said that, you know, Black people couldn't attain the highest peak, you know, self-actualization, you understand? Okay. And he actually copied this from a tribe in Canada, because you see, the highest stage a human can attain is the stage of cultural preservation. When you say, even if I'm not here tomorrow, my culture, what I stand for, will live on. But you see, we are caught up in this rat race of saying, okay, I'm not down there like the others. I'm not being confronted with racism. But you've forgotten that the highest goal, you know, housing, feeding also, those are basic things that even an animal looks out for, you know. Then you come to things like spiritual fulfillment, cultural, everything. But the highest peak of that pyramid should be self-realization and this cultural preservation of knowing, if I'm not here tomorrow, my children, my people will carry on that which I lived for and which I believed all my life. And we haven't gotten to that stage, because in a capitalist society, we do focus a lot on the material things, forgetting that it's a lot about ideologies, philosophies, and beliefs. And if you don't conquer the mind, you can't conquer the body. And that was the system that the racists used on us. So we have to first recapture our minds back.
Wow, this is amazing. Then it takes us again to spirituality. But you were talking about the ideology, and I remember the ideology that was Malcolm X. He spoke about Black nationalists or nationalism. Is that an ideology you think we can copy from? What's that all about, Black nationalism?
You see, Vera, that would not be so straightforward, because remember, we have evolved as a people. Now, we are not in America. We here in Germany, we aren't the children of slaves. Yeah, we were indirectly impacted by it, you know. But here we have a different situation, you understand? So we have to develop something suited to us. Don't forget, we have different varieties of Blacks here. You have Blacks that are just coming in. You have Blacks that have been here for very long. You have Blacks that were born here. You have Blacks that are in union with white people. You have the children that come out of such marriage. You have people of color. You see, so there are different people confronted with similar and yet different problems. Some have more advantages than others, you know? But the most important thing is that we learn to believe that we are not inferior.
Now, how do we learn to believe that? How do we create new belief systems so that we can be able to overcome the things that we were told, or were taught, or we had learned from our foreparents or from our grandparents? How do we learn to have new belief systems? How do we get that? Step by step.
Yeah, it's better. It's just one person that comes up with, I mean, like Marcus Garvey or so. I mean, even Hitler, one person comes up with an idea. But then you have to have a system of propaganda, of pushing it across to the people. You understand? Having a new ideology is not a problem. One person can do that. But you have to build it up, and you have to make the children believe it, and start believing it at a tender age. You know, when I was a kid, I was told, when you go to the market, don't bend and look between your feet because you'll see a ghost. Or don't pick something on the floor and it is from the witches. Do you know that as crazy and stupid as it is, I still don't do it. So
so it's just in your mind, and it's not going out.
So entrenched in there that you believe it. And that is what most great leaders, the good and the bad, they worked with an ideology, a belief, and they had this charisma, and they kept on, repeating it. You'd see them, Marcus Garvey, he had his people in uniform, very elaborate uniform. They would march on the streets feeling proud, So then again, back to our churches, our organizations, all our cultural paradigm, we have this idea, we are great, we are this, we can do this. Then we move with the ideology. Then we learn to support our fellow blacks. If I see where I live in my town, if I see a black shop, I should know that even though I don't enter this shop, it raises me as a person. It raises my prestige, because someone walking past will say, wow, there's a black shop. Oh, look at that's a black woman. You understand? We have to support our own businesses. You understand? If you know there's a black doctor in your town, support, go there. If you know there's a black shop, support, go there. We have to learn to support. That's why I said, even if the government gives you today a school and says, okay, here, Vera, this school, now run it, you might be surprised. Some won't come because they'll think it's inferior. Why? The ideology, the mind. That's why, you see Bob Marley. Bob Marley was a musician, but he was a great philosopher.
Okay.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
We thank you, Maria. We have a question from Ms. Val, and she says, slow death of racism. It is certainly going to take us much longer to eradicate this destructive notion, racism, from the minds of ordinary people. What do you, Ms. Maria Kaine, think about this notion?
Certainly, absolutely right. You understand? Because just the same way, you see, we are battling with these inferior philosophies and beliefs that have been put into us. The same thing for the white people. It has been so deeply entrenched into the white man that he's superior. Do you know that I can tell you many white people, they discriminate or do racial things without even realizing that what you just did or what you just said is racial. You understand? Because it's so deeply entrenched in them. And I tell you, even as little as we are trying to do to overcome these years of oppression, I must say, honestly, the white people, they are not really doing much to get rid of it. It's still being condoned in the police, in the schools. I mean, the teachers will tell you, we get taught this. You know, they are taught, you know, when a teacher will say, oh, I'm surprised your child did homework. I didn't expect it of a black child. You understand?
Okay.
It is still so much a part of them. It's taught in the police schools. It's taught to the teachers. I mean, I am even sure that maybe if you want to take a job in a government office, that somebody will probably be telling you, and or in Abata, oh, and be careful. You know, these black people, when they walk in here, they're aggressive. You understand? It's already from the children. That maybe you bring your black child to a school, maybe, you know, of course, our children are better built, bigger, and you already see the white children taking 1-2 steps back. So it's
Now,
a long, hard battle.
this is a challenging conversation. It's really it's hard to always remind ourselves of the challenge. But now let's have a scenario that we had all the possibilities to make to make a change. What would that change be? What would you tell the politicians? What would you tell the teacher teaching our kids? What would you tell the medical doctor, the psychologist who is having to treat our patients or treat us? What is that one or two things you want to tell as a statement for our conversation today to help families?
Well, Vera, you see, we've really passed the stage of begging or pleading or saying, oh, you know, I would tell them, you better watch out and wait. We are coming out. I believe so much in our younger generation. I would tell them, you better make that change or we will make you make it. You understand? We are coming out. This shouldn't be interpreted as a call for violence or anything, but we sure are going to come out because Vera, for all that oppression, we need to punish them, and we're going to punish them with success. You understand? I have nothing to say to any white person because they know what they've been doing all these years. It's a deliberate and it's purposely done. So I will only give them the message, you watch out. We are coming out. We are going to punish you with success.
I take that for our last conversation, our last word. We are going to punish you with success. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always a very, very difficult conversation. And today again we had a difficult one, but I'm sure that today we had a lot of time to have to reflect on the way forward. That's what made the conversation today really, really special. And of course, this platform is for us, by us, and with us, so that we can converse, we can talk, we can heal ourselves from the hurt. I mean, this platform can be a psychological platform to let go of the things that we have experienced from the hands of the oppressors. But of course, it's a platform whereby after we have empowered ourselves, then we want to take actions so that we don't stay on the same space. And from your actions plans, you said that it will be good if we support our businesses. You mentioned also the fact that it will be good if we teach our children our history. It will be good if we rewrite our history because history is already written, but we rewrite it again and then teach our children. You made mention the fact that if there should be a change, then we should have to renew our minds so that we can really go for the change. Maria, I thank you for the time that you took to spend with us and for the insights, especially the history. You have a last word, Maria, for this our conversation. What would you say?
Yeah, Vera, thank you very much for having me on. You know, keep up the good work, you know, and really, I just hope for anyone listening, they can just, if they just take this one message, punish them with success. We are no longer begging or pleading. We are going to punish them with success. There are two things I always told myself as a child. One, I'm going to die like a tree standing. Don't let anybody push me down. I will die with my dignity. Trees die too, but with their dignity. And secondly, punish them with success. So
Thank you
whatever you are
so
doing,
much.
wherever you are, it's time to pay back.
And pay back with excellency, pay back with success, pay back
Exactly.
with working together. Because Levi says, never forget the slogan: United we stand, and divided we fall.
Exactly. Having happy homes, being united, that's all payback. Payback doesn't mean just being a millionaire. Payback is
Mm-hmm.
having a happy home, having raised decent children. That's
Mm-hmm.
all success. Success is
That's
not
true.
only measured materially.
That's very true. That's very true. Thank you, Maria. I salute you. And ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our conversation today. And next week, we are going to also have the conversation continue. We're going to be having a dynamic sister also here on board with us. Tune in every Thursday. This is our platform. It is your platform. And together we want to have a good conversation. We want to heal ourselves and we want to empower ourselves to take actions for change. I wish you a nice evening and hope to see you next time. I am your host and a sister in change, Vera Sompon.